Alright guys, welcome back to JBSR Plays It, and welcome back to part 2 of my mid-season power rankings. It's going on way longer than I imagined. If this one only clocks in at like half an hour, it's because I mean, come on. 3 hours of podcasting, it gets exhausting. I'm not doing a radio program here, I don't have commercial breaks, I'm just talking for 3 straight hours. So, we're just going to jump right back into it. And a lot of you guys are probably trying to figure out how much of a homer I'm being, how much I'm pulling for my favorite team, and why we have not seen my Buffalo Bills just yet. And the answer is here they are at number 16, the 5-3 Buffalo Bills. Their record makes them look a little better than maybe it might indicate. And again, this is the problem with following the team more closely is I can look and say, oh, you know, I think the 3-5 Rams are actually the number 22 team in the league, when a lot of people would maybe put them at number 26. I don't watch them that closely. I don't see every single flaw. I see every flaw with the Buffalo Bills, and I see what's working well. And I can tell you right now, the flaws are starting to outweigh everything else, even though they are at 5-3. Losing the games, you know, getting blown out by San Diego, and losing that game to Houston, those are going to be huge coming back later on down the road. Losing to New England, that's just what we do. But the team has looked significantly better since Kyle Orton stepped in after week 4. You're looking at the number. I can look at the numbers right here. Manuel, 173 yards, 202 yards, 238, 225. Orton, 308, 299, 283, 238. And that 238 is a little deceiving because that was that 43-23 blowout win where he only threw like 17 pass attempts. Like, he could have easily gotten that up to 500 if he had just thrown like 3 more passes. They've set themselves up pretty well at 5-3, though. The problem in this, they have a home game against the Jets, and they're at Oakland. And other than that, every single one of the teams they face is above 500. They were on a bye last week. This coming Sunday, they are home for Kansas City. Then they're at Miami, home for the Jets, home for Cleveland, at Denver, home for Green Bay, at Oakland, at New England. That is their second half schedule. But if I have to look at this from a fan perspective and a positive perspective, this is sort of like in college football, where you're a team. You look at Florida State. Right now, they're number 1, or number 2, they're undefeated. If they lose that game to Notre Dame, they're like number 12, because they have no one else they can really point to and say, oh, that's a big victory. While the ranking systems don't quite work that way in the NFL, what you can look at is Kansas City is 5-3, Miami is 5-3, Cleveland is 5-3. Those are all teams in playoff contention. Those are all teams that, you know, winning against them will help tiebreakers. It will help their conference schedule. You know, I don't think they have a chance against Denver. I don't think they can beat New England because they didn't stand a chance. Although maybe if Gronk's out, maybe it's a different story. They're home for Green Bay, but Green Bay plays in the cold too, so that doesn't help. They're at 5-3. You got 2 gimme wins, home for New York and at Oakland. Although Oakland, maybe that's not a gimme win. Maybe at that point they're sitting at 0-14 and just really want that win. But you're home for Kansas City off of a bye. And Kansas City has looked good, but not great. You're at Miami for Thursday night, so you got a short week. That's not helping. But you annihilated Miami the first time around. You get that. And then you get the Jets after that. So you're not looking past Miami. You get extra rest to plan for the Jets. And then you get the Browns. So in a realistic world, if you look at the easiest path for the Bills to get to the playoffs and get into 10-6, you have to go 4-0 in November. You have to win home for Kansas City, at Miami, home for the Jets, home for Cleveland. That gets you to 9-3. Sitting pretty for most teams and most schedules. But you got to figure at Denver is a loss, home for Green Bay is a loss, at Oakland is a win, and at New England is a loss, and that puts you right back in 10-6. And I don't know, like I said before, I don't know that gets you in the playoffs in the AFC this year. I don't know it's a tough road for the Bills. And again, they could just as easily, they could go 4-0 in November because they have to. But if you're really testing their mettle, they could go 1-3 and just shoot themselves in the foot, and they're done 6-6. Goodbye. No more playoffs. They're winning these games, but they're sloppy when they're doing it. Even this 43-23 game to the Jets, you got 6 turnovers handed your way, and you didn't turn the ball over once, and you only won by 20. Give New England the ball 6 times and watch them set the record with 150 points. Whatever the scoring record is, watch New England do that. Watch Denver do that. Watch these other teams do it. The running game there without both running backs. I don't know if Fred Jackson's going to be back for this Kansas City game. I don't think he will be. I think maybe at Miami they're thinking, or home for the Jets. I think he's out for a few. And then when you get Cleveland, they're going to have Josh Gordon back. So it's not like that's going to be, helping. But maybe it's Johnny Manziel in at quarterback. So maybe that is a plus. But at Denver, that's scary. Home for Green Bay. Home for Green Bay, actually, maybe the winnable game out of those 3. And that's entirely because Aaron Rodgers is the only, Aaron Rodgers, Jordy Nelson, and then that's it. I think that's pretty much it for good players on that team. Clinton Dix is looking good, but he's a rookie, so you can't really rate him with the top safeties. Just like I won't rate Sammy Watkins as a top wide receiver. Now, he could very well be up in the top 5 in all the receiving categories, but I wouldn't put him up there just yet because he's a rookie. And he's proving to be the only reliable option on that team. Scott Chandler's coming up pretty well. Robert Woods had that good first game. Mike Williams might as well not be on the team. I'm not surprised they couldn't trade him away. I don't think anyone wanted him. It's going to be a tough road for the Bills. It's going to be, but I do believe with Kyle Orton in there over EJ Manuel, they've got a better chance than they would have in the past. So I think anything is possible for this team if they can just clean up some of the acts. If maybe the bye week is going to be good for them. I picked them to go 10-6 to finish the season, but that's just because it's my team and I think they can win these games. Because I genuinely think they can beat Kansas City, because I don't think Kansas City has been great, and the Bills are coming off a bye, and the Bills are at home. I think they can beat Miami because they swept them last year. I think they should have no problem with the Jets. They didn't last time. And I think Cleveland is an inconsistent team, so I think they should be able to beat them. So I'm not just picking them to go 4-0 in November because it's like, oh, that's my team. I think they can. I legitimately think they can. But again, I can see 1-3. I could see maybe even 0-4. That's not out of the realm of possibility because the Bills, they're 5-3. They are this low on this list for a reason. It's because besides Cleveland, I think they're the ugliest looking of the 5-3 teams. And yes, there are 2 5-4 teams I have ranked ahead of them. So the ESPN power rankings of number 18. I don't quite agree with that, but they also they put the Saints at like number 5 to begin the season. This is why I don't like having the rankings throughout, because you put too much weight into last season and all this other stuff. So they put the Saints at number 5, and no one really wants to drop them that much. So it's very easy for them to hop back up in the rankings because, they're the Saints. They're number 14 just because we said so. They're clearly not the 14th best team in the league, although at the end of the season, they could be number 5. Who knows? Next up, number 15, the San Diego Superchargers, who I thought were going to be dominant. Clearly not the case. The wheels are starting to come off. All of their weaknesses are starting to be exposed. 5-1 start, 3 straight losses. So it's not, hey, look, the Falcons suck in this too. They barely lost to Arizona. They beat the Seahawks by 9 points. They beat the Bills by 12. They blew out the Jaguars. They shut out the Jets. They eked out a win over the Raiders by 3. Then they lost by 3 to Kansas City. They got their butts handed to them by Denver. And then they got shut out 37-0 against Miami. And now they're sitting on a bye, and that's their last thought. But they do come home for Oakland, home for St. Louis right off the bye, before going at Baltimore, home for Denver, home for New England, home for Denver, at San Fran, at Kansas City. really, again, the West, because they both play each other, and those are probably the two best conferences in the NFL, they're just going to beat the hell out of each other. So it's terrible. It's a bad situation for them. But the Chargers, if they can get Phillip Rivers back to close to his MVP, hey, look, I told you Doug Martin was overrated, and there he is right there. If they get Phillip Rivers close to his MVP level again, which I still think he has that in him, then I think they'll be okay. I think they can, they're 5-4. 1, 2, 9-7 is possible. 10-6 is possible. They are a good enough team to hang with Baltimore, to hang with San Fran, to hang with Kansas City. So, and then give me games against Oakland and St. Louis. Or Oakland could beat them. Again, it's home. Although both of these teams could both be calling Los Angeles home. You could just have 5 teams in Los Angeles next year. You never freaking know. So you never know what's going to happen with this Chargers team. I still have confidence in them, even though I have them at number 15. I do think they can get into the playoffs. But they're dropping some key games here, and they need to get it together after the bye. And again, if they can rattle off 2 straight gimme games, then they can right this ship. Number 14, we've got the Miami Dolphins at 5-3. Who knew that Joe Philbin, wondering whether Tannehill was going to start, it was going to be a big move for this team? All of a sudden, this is looking like a Miami team who can strongly contend. Someone who I, as a Bills fan who have to play them one more time, am fearing. Even though the Bills beat them by 19. This is not the same Miami team that the Bills beat by 19. They're at Detroit this week. That'll be a good test. 6-2 Detroit team. Then they're home for Buffalo, at Denver, at the Jets, home for Baltimore, at New England, home for Minnesota, home for the Jets. They got a little rough stretch in the middle, but they got 2 winnable games at the end. They've got both their Jets games left. But again, who knows with this Jets team? They're all over the place. Maybe the Jets will sweep them and win both of them. This is a Dolphins team that a lot of people are trying not to fall in love with because it happens every single season and then they go 7-9. And looking at the schedule, I can see them going 7-9. I think they could also beat any of the teams that they're playing, with the exception of maybe Denver. But I don't know what to think of this team. I don't know who their running back is. Mike Wallace isn't looking great, so I don't know who he's throwing the ball to. I don't know how much I believe in Tannehill versus just Bill Lazor's system. There's a lot of question marks I have about this team right now. But 3 games coming up. At Detroit, home for a team that already blew them out, and then at Denver. They've got extra time to prepare for Denver. Those games could make or break their season. Should make or break their season. Because then they, at New York. But they've still got some tough games. It's great. All these teams in the AFC are 5-3, and all of them are playing each other. So they're just going to sort themselves out. It's sort of like the SEC West. Everyone's like, oh my God, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Auburn, Alabama. It's like, they all play each other. They will figure out who's ultimately going to go. And you could have 4 10-6 teams going for 2 playoff spots. That is not out of the realm of possibility either. The Bills are 3-0 against the NFC right now, and that means nothing for the seeding other than common opponents, which hopefully doesn't come to that. So, Dolphins, they've turned around really well, but we've seen this before. Next up, number 13, the Baltimore Ravens. This is a team I had in the top 10. I'm kind of glad they got annihilated by Pittsburgh because I really didn't want to put them in the top 10. But they have been dominant in their wins, and I don't think they've gotten blown out yet, have they? Except for the Steelers game. I think that was... They lost by 7 to Cincy. They lost by 7 to Indy. They lost by 3 to Cincy. And then they got smoked by 20 against Pittsburgh. So, but in their wins, 20-point win over Pittsburgh. 28-point win over Carolina. I don't feel like doing the math out. Big win. Oh, that's 31 over Tampa Bay. 22 over Atlanta. And then, 23-21 over Cleveland. So they've been dominating in their wins. They've got like one of the best point differentials or had it up until they lost against Pittsburgh. So, and they got Tennessee this week to right the ship. But then they're on a bye, and then they're at New Orleans, which has been the common theme all this time. New Orleans, don't be surprised if they go 8-8 or 8-0 at home. Home for San Diego, at Miami, home for Jacksonville, at Houston, home for Cleveland. This again, they're just playing. All these teams are playing each other. They got San Diego, they're at Miami. They could come off their bye and rattle off. If they lose to New Orleans and then rattle off a win versus San Diego, a win versus Miami, and win out the rest of their schedule. That is not out of the realm of possibility. Or they could finish 8-8 and wonder what the hell happened to their promising beginning of a season. This is just because all these teams, we don't know. Doing this power ranking sucked because I figured the bottom 5 were pretty simple. You can make arguments either way. I'm not 100% sold on necessarily having Tampa Bay being the worst team in the league. You could argue with me that it's Tennessee, or it's Jacksonville, or it's Oakland, or it's the Jets, or it's Atlanta. You could argue with me with those. I think the top of the list, I think, is pretty clear cut. But this is middle ground. I don't know who the hell is who. The Steelers are 6-3, and if you would ask me 3 weeks ago to make a power rankings, I would have had them all the way down at like number 19. I don't know what the hell to make of half of these teams. The Bills are 5-3, but they could easily be freaking, 1-7. I don't know what the hell to make of any of these teams. Baltimore should not hold all these blowout victories and then be 5-4. That is not something that should be going on right now, but it is. But again, here we go. They're all lumped up together. This entire division is pretty much all lumped together in this middle ground. Because coming up at number 12, Cincinnati Bengals at 5-2-1. This is a team that I would have had at number 1 easily, no problem after 3 weeks happened. And then they tied to Carolina. And then they got shut out by Indianapolis. And they tied to Carolina. And then they got shut out by Indianapolis. And it was like, and now they're just squeaking out a victory over Baltimore. Controversially, of course. And then Jacksonville, they win by 10. They probably should have won by more. Now they got this Thursday night game against Cleveland, and they're at New Orleans. Ouch. At Houston, could go either way. At Tampa, win. Home for Pittsburgh, ouch. At Cleveland, Home for Denver, ouch. At Pittsburgh. They could go 7-9 or 7-8-1. They really could. New Orleans, loss. Should be a loss. Oh wait, I skipped. Cleveland, they're home. They should win. So 6 wins. Let's see. Tampa, that should get them the 7. After that, at Houston's winnable. But they're 5-2-1. They're in first place right now, and I think by the end of the season, they will be in third. Most because I think the wheels are going to fall off harder for Cleveland. So I don't know about this Denver team. They are not impressing me lately. And even with, they got AJ Green back and they only won by 10 over Jacksonville. I'm not saying that Jacksonville is necessarily that terrible. I have them at number 31 for a reason, though. They should have mopped the floor with them a little bit more. You would think if you're, if you can beat Baltimore without AJ Green, and Baltimore is exponentially better than Jacksonville, you should be able to mop the floor with Jacksonville with AJ Green, and they couldn't do that. And now short week, they got Cleveland, long time against New Orleans, doesn't matter. It's not looking good if you're, like me and you're rooting for Cincinnati. It's just not. But another team that's not looking too good. This is nice. I'm looking at their schedules on ESPN, and literally, this is proof they are all playing each other because I just have clicked on the name of the team and gone through. I'm trying to get back to these schedules, and it's all the way the hell back here. But coming in at number 11, the defending Seattle Seahawks sitting at 5-3. Oh boy, like I said, I don't know how they got this high. Actually, I was kind of thinking I'd have them dropped lower, but winning is winning. They won 36-16 over Green Bay, and ever since then, 27-17 over Washington, then loss, 4-point win over Carolina, 6-point win over Oakland. This team is not the same team. And a lot of what they did last year comes down to luck. And not Andrew Luck, I mean just actual luck. Russell Wilson, everyone was like, oh my God, he's the MVP. He might be. I'm not saying he's not good. He's got no weapons around him. And Marshawn Lynch is playing like a man who knows he's not going to be on this team next year, so he kind of doesn't care. He has had one game this year over 100 yards. One. Russell Wilson has 2. That's not, Lynch 110 yards in the opener, and then Percy Harvin with 45 yards in week 2. That's not Seattle football. Seattle football isn't allowing 30 points to San Diego. Seattle football isn't allowing 24 points to Oakland, or 30 points to Dallas, or 28 points to St. Louis. That's not Seattle football. That's what they're doing. They are not the same team. And I'm not going to sit here and say that there's no way they make the playoffs, or there's no way that they win the Super Bowl. Considering they're in the West, they've got enough. Look at it as a control your own destiny thing. Home for the Giants, at Kansas City. Home for the Cardinals, at San Francisco, at Philly. Home for San Fran, at Arizona. Finish it off against St. Louis. You figure, even though they lost to St. Louis, you figure St. Louis at home should be a gimme game. You figure the Giants coming up should be a gimme game. And then you got to figure they can split the rest and go 9-7, 10-6. You got to figure that's what they should be able to do. But they should also not have lost to St. Louis in the first place. And they shouldn't have lost a home game to Dallas, with a Dallas team playing questionable defense. And they got shut down by Dallas, too. Like, they scored 23, but they got shut down pretty well by Dallas. This is not what they should be playing for a team that started off, with a big blowout victory in the opening game, and everyone thought repeat. They haven't been that team since. It was a one-game anomaly, as we are learning. So, I don't know. Seahawks, I'm not feeling you. Team I am feeling, though, even though I just keep putting them down and think that they're not going to do well. Kansas City Chiefs coming in at number 10 at 5-3. Another one of these AFC 5-3 teams. They've got a big game. This Buffalo game is pretty big. But after that, looking at their schedule, and I keep harping on, the West has a hard schedule. They do. And I look at their schedule real quick, and I'm like, oh yeah, they've got an easy schedule. And then I forget that's what some of these teams look like, because they're at Buffalo, home for Seattle, at Oakland, home for Denver, at Arizona, home for Oakland, at Pittsburgh, home for San Diego. Division games are always tougher. Some of Oakland's closest almost victories have been against division foes. So you can't say that they got 2 gimme games against Oakland, but those might be the most winnable. And I'm not saying that Seattle, like I just said about Seattle, I don't think they're necessarily easy, and Pittsburgh is all over the place, and San Diego hasn't looked that great. So they could go on a stretch and go 11-5, or that's it. They go 6-10. Everything is so wide open because of how these teams play, and you don't know. They're all playing in the second half, so you don't really know. They lost to Denver, but only by a touchdown, but Denver took the second half off. They beat San Diego already, but only by a field goal. I don't know. I am so glad. The Bills play in the AFC East, and I am so glad for that, because the rest of the teams in their division, as much as I'm looking at 2 5-3 teams and a 7-2 Patriots team in that division right now, it's still not really that tough of a division. But these teams in the West, man, I just feel bad. Moving right along, and I guess I should mention this real quick. So I had to take a bit of a break there. I had to go get blood drawn and stuff. You see up there it says first down and 30. There's very good reason for that. I forgot to pause it. I thought I did, and apparently that didn't happen. So the illusion is ruined now. It's 2nd and 29. I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny. All right. So, anyways, at number 9, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers, the 6-3 Ben Roethlisberger playing out of his goddamn mind. Yeah, that team. I have them. Good catch, Evans. And all of a sudden, it doesn't matter how many delay of games I had. The problem with the Steelers, they've looked down for the last couple of weeks. I'm doing this based on the entire season. It's not just a knee-jerk, like, oh my god, they look good for 2 weeks, so clearly they're one of the best teams. If Roethlisberger is going to throw for 6 touchdowns every game, they're going to win the Super Bowl. It's as simple as that. He's not going to do that. You know, in most of their wins, they've been blowouts. Well, I can't really say most. But against Cleveland, they won 30-27. It was a blowout in one direction in the first half where they were annihilating Cleveland. And in the second half, Cleveland blew them out and they barely hung on. Then they lose by 20 to Baltimore. Then they blow out Carolina. Then they lose by 3 to Tampa Bay. And then they win by 8 against a lowly Jacksonville team. Then they get blown out. Then they barely, they win by a score against Houston, and then they blow out Indy and Baltimore. And now they have the Jets. This team, their schedule coming up, and they've already played 9 games. So they're a little more sure of what they have in store for themselves. But they're at New York Jets and at Tennessee. Those are a couple of gimme games. Then they have their bye. Then they're home for New Orleans, at Cincy, at Atlanta, home for Kansas City, home for Cincy. If they can play, Roethlisberger doesn't have to throw for 6 touchdowns every game, but if he can average like 3, which is a pretty impressive average, but 3 touchdowns would be more than enough. I mean, the 2 gimme games, that gets them to 8. They have a bye. Even if they don't beat New Orleans, they're not playing at New Orleans. They lucked out. They're home for New Orleans. Okay, so that drops them down to 8-4. They split with Cincy, 9-5. Atlanta's a gimme, 10-5. And in Kansas City, they need to win that game, 11-5. Their schedule sets up pretty well for them, actually. So I think this division comes down to them and the Ravens. And unfortunately, they split the series, so it comes down to division wins. And as of right now, that actually looks slightly better for the Steelers, because the Steelers are 2-2. Ravens are 2-3. Steelers still have to play the Bengals twice. If they sweep those games, then that gives them the inside lead for sure. And also pretty much knocks out Cincinnati. The defense is not as elite as it normally would be, but Brett Kiesel and James Harrison are back, and for some reason, they are playing like it's 2009. I don't understand it, but it's whatever works for them. If that's the spark they need for their defense, then so be it. No, but I put this right in my notes. I have no idea who this team is right now. I know what they're trying to be. They're trying to be a pretty balanced attack. Ben Roethlisberger is going great through the air. Their offensive line is playing really well. They've got probably one of the better groups of wide receivers outside of Denver. And I would actually put them toe-to-toe with Denver. Heath Miller is still all reliable at tight end. You've got, LeGarrette Blount and Le'Veon Bell at running back. They're trying to get them going. Le'Veon Bell, I think he's like 4th in the league in rushing, but he has games where he only runs for like 30 yards. So when he's on, he is on. And when he's not, he's not. Then this team is very, I'm looking at Bell 109, Bell 59, Bell 147, Bell 63, Bell 82, 82, 57, 92, 123. He sort of does his thing. Leading receiver in every single game, though, Antonio Brown. Every single one. That guy is, I'd make the argument he's the best receiver in football right now. but no, I'm pretty confident he's the best receiver in football. Moving on, and here's where it gets good. Number 8, the first place Detroit Lions, which means, yes, I do have them ranked lower than the Packers. And here's the thing. They have the best defense in football right now. And Ndamukong Suh is looking really good, which is funny because he might not be back next year. They have 2 losses. They got blown out by Carolina, a Carolina team that we thought was going to be really good when they started 2-0, and then that never materialized. And then a 3-point loss to Buffalo because their kicker couldn't make a single kick. With a field goal kicker, they might be undefeated. Who knows? But I'm looking at the rushing numbers right now. Joique Bell, 51. Joique Bell, 36. Reggie Bush, 61. Bush, 46. Wynn, 48. Bell, 76. Bell, 48. Bell, 39. They don't have... I know it's more of a running back by committee, but they don't have any one guy they can rely on. The problem is the entirety of the offense. And I don't know about the offensive line. I don't pay enough attention to that stuff. No one's really said anything. I can't imagine they're doing terrible. But it could be I don't know if it's their fault for not opening up these holes. Anyone outside of Detroit really doesn't know who the hell Joique Bell is. I don't even know who Wynn is. I just see his name on this. He led the team in rushing against the Bills. That's literally all I see. So, but you would think... Calvin Johnson missed most of the season. He hasn't missed that many games, but a lot of the games he was in, he wasn't exactly there. Golden Tate has picked up where he left off. And again, I've been saying this. Calvin Johnson should be back. They were on a bye. They're playing Miami. He should be back. And hopefully they can get him and Golden Tate going at the same time. Matthew Stafford has tended to be a lock-on quarterback where you're the number 1 guy, you're getting the ball. You look at someone like Peyton Manning or Brett Favre. If you're open, you're the one getting the ball. Matthew Stafford, if he sees Calvin Johnson double covered and he sees Golden Tate wide open on the other side, I'm not 100% certain he throws it to Golden Tate and he just lobs it up there for Calvin Johnson. I feel like that's the type of guy he is, and because Calvin's not there, he's throwing it to Golden Tate. So it's kind of a weird situation, and it'll be interesting to watch, and they're going to need everyone in their game because they got a very good Miami team coming to town. And then after Miami, they're at Arizona, at New England, home for Chicago, home for Tampa, home for Minnesota, at Chicago, and at Green Bay. Really a nice little homestand there. Having 3 straight home games is always nice. You're home for Miami, but then you're at Arizona and at New England. They could lose 3 straight right there and drop to 6-5. But then home for Chicago, home for Tampa, home for Minnesota, 3 straight wins right there, 9-5. At Chicago doesn't win at home. That could get them to 10. And then at Green Bay, that could be a decisive Week 17 game. So it's up in the air. You never know. But they need, in these next 3 games, they're going to have to win at least 1, preferably 2. Realistically, they need to, Calvin Johnson needs to come on strong and lead them, or at least open up this offense a bit. Because the defense will do their job. You look at what they've allowed. They went through up until that Week 7 game against New Orleans, they didn't allow more than 17 points. Even they allowed 23 to New Orleans, 21 to Atlanta. They're performing. They're taking care of what they need to do. And those, again, Atlanta's offense is really good when they're passing the ball. And New Orleans is New Orleans. Of course they're going to run up the score. Minnesota, 3 points. Buffalo, 17. The Jets, 17. They held Green Bay to 7 points. Carolina, 7. New York, 14. Defense is getting the job done, but this offense needs to pick up, which is weird because this is a conversation you would think this is how it would have been under Jim Schwartz, and it's not. You have Jim Caldwell now. The defense is better under Caldwell than it was under Schwartz. It's insane. But moving on from that, up to number 7, Here they are, the 5-3 RELAX Green Bay Packers. This is the Aaron Rodgers show. He is completely dominating right now. He's just having his way with any defense. He's doing whatever he wants. The problem is the run game isn't helping. Yeah, they got a couple good games out of Eddie Lacy, but that hardly defines the season. Eddie Lacy, what do we got for running totals? What did I click? I want the full thing. There it is. James Starks. For 2 out of the first 3 weeks, James Starks is your leading running back, ladies and gentlemen. So, Eddie Lacy, I'm sorry if you drafted him number 1 overall in your fantasy draft. You made a mistake. Lacy, 43, 48, 105, 40, 63, 59. That's your run game. It's not looking good. If I can just be 100% honest. Aaron Rodgers is looking good. I love the stat line. Week 5, Aaron Rodgers 156 yards. They won 42-10. Aaron Rodgers is putting points on the board, save for 2 games. 16 in the week 1 game, 7 again in week 3 against Detroit, like I just said. Other than that, pretty efficient, scoring offense. 31, 38, 42, 27, 38, 23 in a loss to New Orleans. Granted, New Orleans scored 44. But looking at their schedule, they're another one. All of the North is coming off a bye. It was like the Bills and the entire North and then like 2 other teams coming off a bye. You're home for Chicago, you're home for Philly, you're at Minnesota, home for New England, home for Atlanta, at Buffalo, at Tampa, home for Detroit. There's some tough games, but they got some favorable matchups. Their road games are against Minnesota, Buffalo, and Tampa Bay. Even as someone who is a Bills fan and thinks that the Packers will just walk into Ralph Wilson Stadium and mop the floor with the Bills, say you drop that game. That is your one above 500 road game. You're at Minnesota and at Tampa. You should be able to handle business there. Home for Chicago. They look terrible. And Jay Cutler's never... I said this... excuse me. I said this when I talked about Chicago. Jay Cutler's never won in Green Bay. That should be a win. Home for Philly against Mark Sanchez. That should be a shootout, but every time we say that, it's like a 7-9 game. So, but that should be a win. Home for New England. Not that weather really affects Tom Brady, but at least it's nice that they're home for that one. Home for Atlanta, it doesn't matter. That's your Monday Night Football game? I'm sorry. Don't stay up for that one. Well, okay, Atlanta will put points up. Atlanta is actually what... Green Bay is being what Atlanta wishes to be, which is forget about running the ball and forget about defense. We're just going to throw the ball really well. The difference is Matt Ryan is having the best season of his entire career, but he's still nowhere near Aaron Rodgers. Like, not at all. But, every single one of these games on their schedule, even if you exclude New England and say that's a difficult game, every one of these games is winnable. Every single one. So, Packers, they're looking good. Even if, overall, the talent on the roster, you're really starting to see holes in how good the depth really is. Moving up, number 6, the Philadelphia Eagles at 6-2. I would have knocked them more for losing Nick Foles, but number 1, he hasn't looked that great. And number 2, like I said earlier, this is pretty much a system. This is college football in Chip Kelly's offense. Like, this is a system quarterback. You throw someone in there, he just has to do a couple things well, and you'll succeed. Mark Sanchez had 202 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, sure, but, you can succeed in this offense. They overcome. They are 6-2, and Nick Foles just threw pick after pick after pick after pick. So I'm not putting them in my top 5, even though they are in first place in their division. I put them below another team there, but it's just, you have to knock them down. You lose your starting quarterback. Even if I think that Mark Sanchez can step in and do a job very much on par with what Nick Foles was doing in the first place. You're losing your starting quarterback. It doesn't matter how good your backup is, unless you have Tom Brady or Kurt Warner stepping in there. You're not going to do very well. That's just how it works. So, but looking forward, they get to ease into this. They got Carolina on Monday night, which is, that's nice little testing grounds, an underperforming defense versus this ridiculous offense. Really good way to let Mark Sanchez sort of warm up. Then you're at Green Bay. That's a tough one. Home for Tennessee, cakewalk. At Dallas is a big game. Home for Seattle. Seattle doesn't play as well on the road. Home for Dallas. Again, you got, that's a brutal little stretch right there. Season-defining stretch, though. And maybe by that second Dallas game is maybe when Nick Foles would be back. Perhaps. It's a broken collarbone. It's not going to require surgery. No one knows anything yet. So he could be back by that second Dallas game. He could be done for the season and going on IR. But he finished the season at Washington, at New York. So pretty favorable end of the season. Ooh, and that Washington game is on Saturday. Nothing like that little TBD for your time, huh? So I already have 40 touchdown passes. We're halfway through the season. I'm at the midway point of my season. So Martin's on pace for 3,000 yards. I'm on pace for like 7,000. McCoy, 18 sacks. Yeah, we're doing good. Oh, good. I have been throwing the ball to Mike Evans. I wasn't 100% sure. Ready to advance. But yeah, just, not the most brutal schedule. Just a little, some tough games on there. But if Philly can take care of business, Green Bay, the two Dallas, and Seattle, if they can just split those 4 games, they're in good shape. Because they can probably sweep up everything else. So moving into the top 5, and we start off with the division rival, the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not going to sit here and say the wheels have fallen off. I'm going to sit here and say that Tony Romo is a much more valuable player than I think a lot of people were going to give him credit for. DeMarco Murray's been the focal point of this offense, but it doesn't mean that Tony Romo has just sort of been sitting there. He's not Alex Smith. He's not a game manager, but he's not. The whole game doesn't have to fall on his shoulders. First loss this season. He's coming off a back surgery. He throws 3 picks. He has a bad game. Everyone has a bad game. Romo just happened to have his in the opener. Then from there, he's really solid for most of the rest of the season. Washington gets hurt, comes back in. Maybe he shouldn't have. Who knows? Only Tony Romo can be the judgment of that. But at the end of the day, he came back. He played. So it's none of our business, I guess. And then Arizona, they lost 28-17 with Brandon Weeden ruining the game. It's their 3 losses are excusable. 28-17, yes, it's a double-digit loss. And they lost twice by that margin. That's kind of odd. But, the San Francisco game is a complete blowout. That's just... There's no arguing that. It's a blowout. They were down 28-0 at one point. They just added some garbage time in the second half. But Arizona, that's not a lot. That's a lot for Arizona. Arizona doesn't usually win that way, but you're not losing 42-10. That loss does not exist on them right now. So it's easily defensible. If I'm a Dallas fan, I'm not freaking out. Maybe they're not, maybe they can win a division. It's still very much so in the air. They're only a half game back. And their schedule coming up, they're at Jacksonville and London this week. Then they're on a bye, so Tony Romo will be healthy, hopefully. At New York, they should play that well. Home for Philly, at Chicago, at Philly. And unlike Philly, they have an easy game sandwiched in between. Then home for Indian and at Washington. So a little, I'd say a slightly tougher schedule. I don't know. No, maybe not. Actually, slightly easier because you're basically trading off. Green Bay for Indy, and then Chicago for Seattle. You got a more favorable schedule if you're the Cowboys. And I mean, Cowboys season is definitely not lost. Not by a long shot, especially not in this conference. But moving on, number 4, team that a lot of people, for some reason, picked to win the Super Bowl. I didn't believe it because I thought they didn't have a complete team. I still slightly feel that way. But the Indianapolis Colts, they are number 4. They are 6-3. Again, it's one of those in my notes. Andrew Luck. That's all you need to know. Andrew Luck. I don't have him winning the MVP right now, but it would be very easy for him to get right into the conversation. What happened? I stopped paying attention, I guess. Their defense is overachieving, but it's not exactly a strength. It's not exactly great. Those first couple of weeks, the Denver game looks closer than it is. Again, like I said, the first couple of weeks, Denver literally just went out to these massive leads in the beginning of the game and then just took the second half off. And in the Philly game, we all know the controversy around that. And they blow out Jacksonville, blow out Tennessee, tight one in Baltimore, tight one at Houston, shut out Cincy, get blown out by Pittsburgh, and then blow out New York. Andrew Luck is the offense. I keep seeing Trent Richardson up on the leading receiver. They keep giving him the ball. Ahmad Bradshaw ends up getting fewer carries, higher average, more yards. I've been saying this all season. Just let it go. The Trent Richardson trade was kind of a bust. He will be a decent player. He will be a very good running back by committee running back. Sort of Darren McFadden. Let's call him that. He'll have, he might have one season where it's like, oh, he's really good, and then come right back down to earth. He's not going to be your lead back or anything. So you've still got to look at that as a concern. Reggie Wayne, I'm going to root for that guy all the time because I want him to move up that. I look at a lot of great players that I've watched over the 15 or so years, maybe a little bit longer, that I've been consistently watching football. And I see a lot of them get lost. Like Rich Gannon will never go to the Hall of Fame. You will never appreciate just how great he was at the end of his career with Oakland, getting them to the Super Bowl. A guy like Trent Green and Priest Holmes, those guys won't see the Hall of Fame. People forget how dominant that Chiefs offense, the trend-setting offense they had. Again, Dick Vermeil, he was the common factor. You had the greatest show on turf. He goes to Kansas City, takes the guy he originally wanted at quarterback, and just blows up the league. Trent Richards, I just said his name and I lost it. Trent Green, throwing for 4,000 yards consistently was unheard of at the time. Obviously now it's commonplace, but at the time was unheard of. Priest Holmes set the all-time the single season rushing touchdown record. LaDainian Tomlinson later broke it. But I look at all these guys who are lost in the shuffle. The Patriots, that dominant defense that led them to the 3 Super Bowls. None of those guys are getting in the Hall of Fame. Vince Wilfork stands the greatest chance, but he was like a rookie back then. Teddy Bruschi. I love Teddy Bruschi. It didn't even offend me when he came back from that stroke, and his first game back was against the Bills. He had 14 tackles. That's okay, Teddy. I'm rooting for you. He's not going to the Hall of Fame. Mike Vrabel's not going to the Hall of Fame. I've witnessed so many great players who are not all-time greats, and wide receivers tend to be that. Marvin Harrison isn't in the Hall of Fame right now. There's a lot of big wide receivers aren't. If Marvin Harrison's not in, Reggie Wayne might not stand a great chance. Hines Ward, great receiver for the Steelers, will go into the Steelers Wall of Fame. Not a very, I question whether or not he'll get into the Hall of Fame. Maybe someday. I'd love to see Reggie Wayne sort of move his way up that yardage mark and really solidify a place and be like, we can really, consider him for Hall of Fame. Future Hall of Famer is always an argument that ticks me off because they throw it around too much. I look in the league right now. It's Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Champ Bailey just retired. He's in there for sure. And other than that, you can make arguments. You could argue for DeMarcus Ware, but I'm not confident in that. You could argue for Drew Brees. I'm not I feel like getting that Super Bowl helped, but I'm not 100% confident in it. There's a lot of really good guys out there, and that Hall of Fame fringe, it's tough. It's tough to call it. And a first ballot Hall of Famer, who cares? You get in, you get in. It doesn't really matter. It's just a matter of voting. I use the American Idol comparison, which is probably a dumb comparison because it's actually something meaningful. But it was like the 5th week or something like that. It was season 2. Ruben Studdard was like winning. Like he was number 1 every single week. They were calling in, voting for him, whatever. The 5th week, no one voted for him because they all just kind of forgot to do it. It wasn't that no one thought he was good. It's just everyone just kind of forgot they were supposed to do it. They just assumed he was getting voted for. So they voted for other people. It's kind of what happens in the Hall of Fame voting. That's why some guys don't get first ballot. I can see Champ Bailey not getting in first ballot because people will just forget to vote for him. Because they'll just assume everyone else is. They're going to use their vote to get, some recognition on someone else who might need it a bit more. You get into the Hall of Fame if you get enough percentage. Like baseball, it's 75%. Jeter will get 99%. Someone's going to not vote for him. You don't get extra credit for getting it at 99%. So if you think everyone else is going to vote for him, I'm going to use my vote to hopefully get this guy into the Hall of Fame. So I don't look too much into that, but I would really love to see Reggie Wayne get some recognition for just his quiet. I mean, he was the number 2 receiver to Marvin Harrison, and he benefited from, he's only ever played, save that one season, Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck. Those have been his quarterbacks. So he's benefited from that, but he's also helped make them better in a lot of ways too. Moving on that ramble aside to number 3. And this is a team I really wanted to put higher. But there's just something. When I look at the power rankings, I look with all the factors I weigh in. So number 3, I got the 7-1 Arizona Cardinals, best record in football, best coach in football as of right now. Although Bill Belichick, considering what that team looked like at the beginning of the season, what they look like now. I mean, their one loss is to the Denver Broncos, where they had to put in their third string quarterback. But other than that, they're scrappy though. Like they win 18-17 against San Diego. They win by 11 points at New York. Win by 9 against the 49ers. Win by 10 against Oakland. So quietly, there are some close games, but a lot of them they look closer than they are. They're not actually, they're technically not because they're 2-score games if you want to break it down like that. But, but there have been a ton of injuries. And you get scared. You just wonder which one of these is going to be the straw that broke the camel's back. Because losing their starting quarterback didn't do it. They lost their starting quarterback and went, 2-1? So, losing the starting quarterback didn't do them in. So who knows what the hell it's going to take. But their defense is great. Andre Ellington, he was a 6th-round pick, right? How do you get that guy in the 6th round? And you look at someone like Trent Richardson with the number 4 overall pick and just nothing. Ellington technically hasn't run for over 100 yards yet. But he's also received for over 100 yards in a game. So he's, dual threat, runner receiver type. Again, going back to Priest Holmes of old. Their schedule coming up. They're home for St. Louis, home for Detroit, at Seattle, at Atlanta, home for Kansas City, at St. Louis, home for Seattle, at San Francisco. Pretty favorable schedule considering where they play, but they just haven't, besides Oakland, they have some cakewalks. They still have 2 games against St. Louis. They have both games against Seattle. They could easily split that because they're just as tough at home as Seahawks are. Atlanta, they've got a pretty reasonable schedule just by virtue of finishing 10-6, and that was only, 10-6 last year, only good enough for 3rd place in their division. So they play a 3rd place schedule, what would normally be a 2nd or even 1st place in some other divisions last year. There's a lot to like about this team, and I'll get into my superlatives a little after, like my midseason awards, but expect Bruce Arians and Carson Palmer to get some mention there. Number 2 and 1. You already know who it comes down to the Patriots and the Broncos, as it should, because I feel like those are the best 2 teams in football right now. And even though they played each other any given Sunday, that rule always applies. So you can't necessarily, this isn't division standings. This is power rankings. So at number 2, I have the New England Patriots. They're 7-2. They've turned the season around after that Kansas City game. Yada, yada, yada. You know all that. Gronk has turned around and become the dominant self that I never thought we'd actually ever see again. Now, when I said we were watching a tight end at the end of his career, that's what he looked like. The way that we were surprised when Antonio Gates puts on his shows and gets 3 touchdown catches and is still showing that he can still be a legitimate tight end in this league, it's sort of what we get from Gronk at this point. Because no one knew. He looked like he was done. I've been saying I think he's out of the league before Brady. I still think he is because of the way he plays. He's not made out of concrete. He may look like he is, but he's not. You can't play forever doing that, but I don't know. And there goes your debate about Hall of Fame, because clearly he's the most dominant force we've ever seen at tight end in the history of the league. It's got to be good for a Hall of Fame vote somewhere, right? You never know. Even though he's done it in such a short time period, he's been dominant. So that's where the Hall of Fame stuff gets tricky. But Gronk will be someone who is remembered because of that. And people will point to it. There are a lot of players who sort of invented positions or reinvented them. And they get credited later on down the road. And you're like, oh, I never really knew that guy. I think Gronk could be, if he's not a Hall of Famer, 20, 30 years from now when you're seeing some of these new breed, more guys like him, and be like, oh, this all started with Rob Gronkowski in the 2010s. Like, that's literally what we're going to be saying. But it's been a big turnaround. It's just showing that Bill Belichick still has it, even in his 60s. Early 60s? I don't think he's quite mid-60s. I think he's like 62. But number 1 is the Denver Broncos, even though they lost to the Patriots. And everyone's, that doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. They've lost 2 games. No, it wasn't a very close loss to the Patriots, but a loss. At the end of the day, their offense is still dominant. They lost and Peyton Manning still threw for 400 some odd yards. Their defense is much improved. All that spending has paid off. There's a lot to like about this team. And I still think this will be the team holding up the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the season. Part of the reason why they're number 1 in my power rankings. And also, I'm a little biased because I picked them at the beginning of the season, and I haven't been right about one of those picks since I picked the Packers a few years back. All right, so now to conclude this massive marathon, let's just go over real quickly, because I can't crown a Super Bowl champion at the midseason mark, but I'm going to do it anyways. Because it's the Broncos. And you can't crown the MVP and everything at the midseason mark, but I'm going to do it anyways. Now, I don't actually know exactly what all of the awards are. There's like Man of the Year, which is like off-field activities. So I'm just going to vote. It's definitely not Ray Rice, and it's definitely not Adrian Peterson. Probably not going to be Greg Hardy or Jonathan Dwyer either. So, let's go to the real awards. So, we'll start off with the big one, the MVP. It's Peyton Manning. That's my vote. It's Peyton Manning. The runner-ups on that, I think Tom Brady, DeMarco Murray, and Andrew Luck all have real claims at it. It's actually kind of a toss-up for me between Brady and Manning. Other player, obviously you can have other players make a run. Again, Roethlisberger throws 6 touchdowns a game. He's in the conversation. There's still a lot of football to be played. Nothing is set in stone. Well, one of them is set in stone. Offensive Player of the Year. Right now it's DeMarco Murray. He's on pace for over 2,000 yards. One game so far under 100 yards rushing, which is insane. Runner-up right now, I would say, besides the MVP candidates, would be Ben Roethlisberger is right there. 2 6 touchdown performances. I don't think that's going to be every week. There could be a couple more 4 scattered in there, and if that's the case, And the same thing, Aaron Rodgers, you can just apply him to both of those as well. So Defensive Player of the Year is J.J. Watt. There's no competition. He's not in the MVP race anymore just because the team's not competing. If they start competing again, he will be in there, but it's J.J. Watt. and there's no one else at all. Offensive Rookie of the Year. I'm going to say Sammy Watkins right now. Other people are agreeing with me. It's not just me. I would actually I would give it to him and Kelvin Benjamin. I feel like they both play. They're both equally important to their teams, have similar roles in being rookie number one options for their quarterbacks. Similar numbers. Watkins has more yards. I think Benjamin has more receptions. But a lot of other rookie wide receivers. Is it John Brown for the Cardinals had that one pretty good game. I forget the guy's name. For the Steelers, I think he's a rookie. Mike Evans, you've got a ton. What's it? Brandon Cooks. There's so much. Like when they said this is the deepest wide receiver class of all time, they were not kidding. So this is tough. I think right now it's Sammy Watkins in the lead. And again, if I had to cast a ballot for someone other than a wide receiver, it would go to Derek Carr. I don't think, none of the running backs are striking me as award worthy. Jay Samaro, I think, is the most significant tight end as of right now. I think Eric Ebron, I think he forgot he played football. But yeah, so that's my offensive rookie of the year. Defensive rookie of the year, it's going to CJ Mosley. That's pretty easy, and I think that's because a lot of people... There's not a lot of discussion outside of J.J. Watt for defensive player of the year, but if there is, CJ Mosley actually gets thrown into that conversation. He's having that good of a season. My runner-up for that, all I got right now is Aaron Donald. I know there are a couple other good guys who are having, other guys who are having a pretty good season. Clinton Dix is having a pretty good season. Kyle Fuller had that pretty good stretch. But right now it's CJ Mosley. Aaron Donald is coming up. And actually with more defensive, or more dominant defensive line play from the Rams, he might even overtake him. Coach of the year, it's Bruce Arians, obviously. Jason Garrett deserves a nod here too because that was another team left for dead. Belichick is a team, Patriots are a team that was left for dead in the beginning of the season, and then they have really turned it around and become arguably one of the best, arguably the best team in the league. But I think Bruce Arians, the job he's doing there, not only do they have the best record in football, I would say this, even if they were like 5-3, I would say this just because how many players they have lost between not only the free agents, but just lost before the season, lost during the season. I mean, John Abraham, gone. Darnell Dockett, gone. Carlos Dansby, signed with whoever the hell, was it Cleveland? I think it was Cleveland he went to. They've lost a ton of guys. Tyrann Mathieu missed time. Patrick Peterson hasn't been the same player. It doesn't matter. Carson Palmer was out for that time. Weren't sure if he was ever going to play again. So... And it doesn't matter. Drew Stanton goes in there and goes 2-1 as a starter. So it's obviously Bruce Arians' award for the taking, and all he really has to do to keep it is just go 11-5. That's all he has to do in my mind, and he keeps it, which should not be a tough order for him. That's just 4-4, 500 ball the rest of the way. And like I said, Jason Garrett is right there. Bill Belichick. Hard to give nods to a lot of other people. John Fox, we knew this team would be good, and that's always sort of knocked down. The comeback player of the year, and I think this is the only oddball award I do. Those are the big obvious ones, but comeback player I like to talk about because there are some pretty good stuff. Rolando McClain has sort of had his hands in that, so he's just been handed that pretty much since the beginning. Just retires 15 times. And then now he's coming in for a Dallas defense that should have been terrible and playing very solidly for them. Not a top 5 inside linebacker. I voted for him for the Pro Bowl because that's just the type of people I vote for, but very good season for him considering no one was really sure. This is a guy who was a first round pick, but this is his first action. He was drafted, 4 years ago? First action in the NFL. Third team he's been on. And you know what? He's having a pretty good season. He had a lot of issues that he had to take care of in his personal life. Seems like he took care of them. Good for him. Other guys to keep an eye on. Carson Palmer, not only just from before the season. I know he played last year, but I'd throw him in that conversation. But also just during the season, you have a nerve that was pretty much dead or asleep. Asleep. And I had trouble bringing it back. But I would throw Carson Palmer in there. And I would also throw in Kyle Orton. Just if he can maintain this streak, and play some really good ball. This is a guy who retired from the Cowboys, sort of forced them to release him, and then he went on, signed to be the backup in Buffalo, with a contract that everyone knew he was going to see the field during the season at some point, but really has sort of helped Buffalo get to 5-3. Offered that veteran leadership that they so desperately needed on the offensive side of the ball. And, I think he is someone, maybe I'm a bit of a homer on this one, but I think he's someone you take into consideration. I'm sure there are other people that are very worthy of this award as well. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are some. I mean, there's a lot of guys who will just miss an entire season last year and then get it. And then there's some guy, I always look at it, because Drew Brees got it 1 year. Did Drew Brees get it twice? No, Chad Pennington got it twice. That was a good one. Chad Pennington got it twice, which I always found hilarious. But yeah, it's all, but just Carson Palmer, and I don't know what he looked like last year. Maybe he's actually not in this conversation. It just, the fact that we could see him playing playoff football again, after sort of the road this guy went through, deciding he wasn't going to play for the Bengals anymore, demanding a trade, going to Oakland, throwing for 4,000 yards. Oh, no, wait, no, he threw for 4,000 last year. Never mind. Scratch it. Nope, sorry. Whoops. Oh, he's playing a lot better this year, though. 24 touchdowns, 22 interceptions last year, 11 touchdowns, and only 2 picks this year. So, never mind. Scratch him off. He does not get on the ballot. Not that he's not having a good season, but obviously not a comeback player of the year candidate. So cross him off. But yeah, Rolando McClain, and then I'd keep an eye on Kyle Orton. See maybe how that goes. And I'm sure there'll be some other guys who I don't even know who could be awarded that. But yeah, for right now, those are my comeback players. Trying to think. Who is having a resurgence? Anybody? Can we give it to LaShawn McCoy for disappearing for the first 4 games of the season and then coming on strong? No? How about Gronk? Can I give it to Gronk? How about Gronk? I'm going to give it to Gronk. I'm going to give the award to Gronk. Gronk gets comeback player of the year so far. Because I thought he was done. So, yeah, there you go. Comeback player of the year is Gronk. But anyways, guys, that will wrap up this extravaganza. I have no idea how long this second podcast could be 14 hours long for all I know. I really have no idea. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please be sure to hit that like button. If you want to see more of these videos, please subscribe. Please share it with your friends. Let them all know. Let them come see. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know why I'm an idiot for putting the Broncos ahead of the Patriots in the power rankings, or why I'm an idiot for putting Peyton Manning as the MVP, when very clearly it should still be J.J. Watt. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know how you think I'm an idiot. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.